Welcome to Rosa Parks Celebration.
Would invite you together over here near the bus. And I'd like to ask our principal involved in the reenactment. I think everyone is here. And I'll take this opportunity to introduce them as they come and take their respective places. We really want to thank MTD for allowing us to have the use of a bus today. It's a very symbolic gesture for them, especially since the history of the bus is has such a dubious history. So so our MTD bus is like one of our actors. So, so we still love our bus and we ride it every day. All right. So I'd like to introduce our bus driver who I'm asked to take his place, Mr. Bill Marks. You may go ahead and have a seat, Mr. Bus Driver. So what happened on the day in Montgomery, Alabama, was that and there had been a history of these kinds of things happening. I mean, you know, this is a continuing thing. The idea that when black people, or colored as they were called, rode the bus or participated in anything, there were white and colored restrooms, there were separate facilities. If you went to the bus station, actually to get the I won't call any name, but I think Trailways was the big one back in those days down south. And when you went to get to the bus, the waiting rooms were separate. So there was white and colored signs all over. And when it came to taking the bus, which was the primary mode of transportation, especially in the South in those days, very few people in the 50s and before had cars. So everybody rode the bus. And when the colored passengers would get on the bus, they would get on the bus, pay their fare, and then they would have to get off the bus and go to the rear door to enter the bus.
Back in the bus. Back in the bus.
So I'd like to invite our two passengers, our Mrs. Rosa Parks, to come to the bus, and the gentleman who was sitting with her in Montgomery, Alabama, today is played by Mr. James Carter. So they paid their fare to get on the bus when it got to the stop, and then they had to get off and go back to the back.
Now you gotta go back. In the back.
Someone had to open the door to let them in the back. It was never easy doing these things. One of the things, the reason that Mrs. Parks was so resolute on that day was because she recognized this bus driver as a bus driver that had even passed her up in favor of white passengers in the past. So she was not she didn't just happen to be there on that day, and she didn't just happen to not give up her seat. She was someone who was a member of the NAACP. She had been to many kinds of community meetings and organizing meetings, and she kind of knew in her mind what she was going to do. She was prepared for the situation to arise in which she could take her stand. So this was the day, December 1st, 1955. And so Mrs. Parks was on the bus, and the bus was filled, and she was sitting in the first row of what would have been the colored section. But the bus was filled, and there were people already in the back and the front. Well, a white gentleman approached the bus to get on, and today our white Southern gentleman is our very own council member, Roger Horton. And you will notice that Mr. White Gentleman gets on and goes straight to a place where he may be able to sit down, only to discover that there was no seats left. All of the seats were filled. And so, what happens?
If you don't stand up, I'm going to call a policeman and have you arrested. Are you going to stand up?
I don't think I should have to stand up. Why do you push us around?
I do not know. The law's the law. You're under arrest.
And so Mrs. Rosa Parks struck a blow for freedom and began what would become one of the biggest movements in our nation's history, the civil rights movement. And I think the fact that we're all gathered here today, as Martin Luther King wanted, black people, white people, brown people, yellow people.
You're not going there. I said, no, sorry. Very much so.